On the planet of Valyria, the alien princess, Lyra, stood tall and proud, gazing out from her palace window. Her silver-blue skin shimmered in the light of the twin suns. She was known across the galaxy for her beauty, wisdom, and strength. But despite her many qualities, there was one thing she refused to accept: a suitor. Lyra had been born into royalty, and with that came the expectation to marry someone of equal power. Her advisors had long since given up trying to convince her. They saw her as the key to forming strong alliances between worlds, but Lyra saw herself as more than just a pawn in political games. The thought of marrying someone simply for power sickened her. She had rejected countless suitors. Some were charming, some were powerful, but none of them had captured her heart. They tried to win her favor with grand gifts, promises of protection, and declarations of love, but Lyra remained unmoved. She had no interest in politics or arranged marriages. She longed for something more, a love that wasn't driven by duty or expectation. Her kingdom was filled with whispers about the princess's refusal to marry. The people, once proud of her independence, began to worry. There was pressure from every corner. From her family, from the nobles, and even from the council. They all insisted that she choose a suitor for the good of Valyria. But the princess would not bow to their demands. One day, a special event was held at the palace. The best and brightest suitors from across the galaxy had gathered to try and win the princess's favor. They were well-dressed, polished, and eager to show off their talents. Some of them were impressive: rich traders, skilled warriors, and influential diplomats. Each one tried to present himself as the ideal match for the princess. But Lyra was uninterested. She sat in her throne, her eyes cold and distant, watching as each suitor made his case. They spoke of alliances, of wealth, of political gain. None of them mentioned what she wanted to hear. None of them spoke of love, of passion, of something real. They were all just trying to impress her with what they thought she needed. The last suitor, a young alien prince from a distant world, stepped forward. He had a confident smile and a strong presence, but his words fell flat. "Your Highness," he began, "I come from a family of great power. Together, we could rule the stars." Lyra's expression remained unchanged. She had heard it all before. "Your words mean little to me," she replied calmly. "You speak of power and alliances, but you do not speak of the one thing I desire. I do not wish to marry for duty or for wealth. I wish for a connection that is real. Until that comes, I will not settle." Her words shocked the room into silence. The suitors exchanged confused glances. They had never heard a princess speak like this. But Lyra knew she had made the right decision. She would not be forced into a life of duty if it meant sacrificing her happiness. But little did she know, a human would soon appear who would change everything. One who was not bound by the expectations of her world, and who would see beyond the walls she had built around her heart. The day after the gathering of suitors, Lyra found herself wandering the palace gardens, lost in her thoughts. The sky above was clear, and the twin suns cast warm rays over the lush green plants. She had expected the suitors to push harder, to try to win her over with more charm or threats. But instead, there was silence. Her refusal had shaken the entire kingdom, and she felt the weight of it. As she walked through the garden, she caught sight of something unexpected. A human, standing near the palace gates, looking lost and bewildered, was a man, unlike anyone Lyra had ever seen before. His dark hair and eyes stood out against the bright surroundings. He wore simple clothes, nothing extravagant, yet there was an air of confidence about him that made him seem important. Lyra's curiosity was piqued. She had heard of humans before. They were a young species, still exploring the galaxy. Lyra had never met one in person. She had heard they were brave, resourceful, and quick to adapt, but also known for their impulsive nature. She wasn't sure what to make of him, but she didn't like the idea of a human just appearing on her planet uninvited. The guards, who had been told to be on high alert, seemed just as confused. They didn't know whether to arrest him or simply question him. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she observed the human. There was something about him that made her feel uneasy, yet intrigued. She walked toward him, her silver blue skin glowing softly under the sun's rays. As she approached, the human looked up, meeting her gaze with surprising calm. His eyes didn't hold the fear or awe that most aliens displayed when facing a princess of her status. Instead, they seemed curious. "You're far from home, human," Lyra said, her voice firm but not unkind. The human smiled slightly, as if the idea of being lost amused him. "I believe I took a wrong turn somewhere," he said casually, glancing around. "I didn't mean to intrude." Lyra crossed her arms. She wasn't sure what to make of him. He didn't look like a diplomat, nor a soldier, nor a traitor. He was just a human, standing there with an easy smile. "I am Princess Lyra of Valyria," she said, her voice steady. "You're on the royal grounds. Do you have any idea how you ended up here?" The human nodded, seemingly unfazed by her tone. "I was on a mission. My ship, well, it didn't quite go as planned. Looks like I ended up in the wrong place." Lyra's curiosity grew. "You're a pilot?" "Sort of," he said with a chuckle. "More of an explorer, really. But yes, I'm used to getting lost." The princess raised an eyebrow. "And you think you can just wander onto my planet without explanation?" The human didn't flinch. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. But now that I'm here, I'd like to see more of this beautiful place." Lyra felt a strange mix of annoyance and fascination. This human was fearless in a way she had never encountered before. Most visitors, especially those from other powerful worlds, would have been on their best behavior, trying to win her favor. This one, however, seemed completely unconcerned by her royal status. Before she could respond, one of her advisors arrived, looking worried. "Your Highness, this human must be escorted out immediately. We cannot allow him to roam freely through the palace." Lyra paused, considering her options. She could have him removed, as her advisor suggested, but something stopped her. The human was an outsider, someone who had no knowledge of her world, and yet he had the nerve to speak to her like an equal. It was strange. Most people were intimidated by her position. With a calm sigh, Lyra turned to her advisor. "Leave him for now. I will speak with him further." Her decision surprised both the advisor and the human, but there was no turning back now. She felt something stir within her, a curiosity that she hadn't experienced in a long time. The next day, Lyra found herself standing before the human once again. This time, she had decided to test him. She could not understand why someone who appeared so ordinary could affect her in this way. Her kingdom was full of powerful beings, and yet the human had a calmness and confidence she hadn't expected. She needed to see if he was truly capable of holding his own. "You've had your moment of freedom here, human," Lyra said, her voice firm as she approached. "But now it's time for you to prove yourself." The human raised an eyebrow, looking at her curiously. "Prove myself? What do you mean?" Lyra's blue eyes flashed with a hint of challenge. "I will give you a series of tests. If you pass, I may allow you to stay. If not, you'll be escorted off the planet immediately." He smiled, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "I've faced worse challenges than whatever you have in mind. Let's do it." Lyra was taken aback by his boldness. She hadn't expected him to be so eager. Still, she kept her composure. "The first test will be one of strength. You will compete in the arena with one of my best warriors." A large, muscular alien warrior stepped forward, his heavy armor glinting in the sunlight. The human didn't seem fazed, but Lyra knew better than to underestimate her own people. Her warriors were among the best in the galaxy, and this one was no exception. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked. The human nodded, stepping forward into the center of the arena. The crowd began to murmur in excitement. Lyra watched from the high platform, her eyes focused on the two competitors. She couldn't help but feel a slight tension building inside her. The warrior charged, swinging his massive blade. The human dodged with surprising agility, avoiding the blow by mere inches. Lyra was shocked. The warrior wasn't slow by any means, but the human moved like he had been trained for this. The fight continued, with the human using speed and cleverness to counter each strike. Finally, in a swift motion, he managed to disarm the warrior, sending the large blade flying across the arena. The crowd gasped. They had expected a quick defeat, but instead, the human had proven his skill. Lyra's heart raced, not from fear, but from something else, something she couldn't quite place. She had to admit it. The human had surprised her. That was impressive, Lyra said as the human stood victorious, breathing heavily but smiling confidently. But strength alone is not enough. She gestured toward a large table that had been set up nearby, covered with strange devices and puzzles. For your next test, you will face one of my most difficult intellectual challenges. Solve this, and I will know that you are worthy. The human glanced at the table, clearly intrigued. He walked over to the devices, studying them carefully. Lyra watched from her perch, wondering how long it would take him to crack the puzzle. Most visitors failed within minutes, but to her surprise, the human was quick, working through the complex mechanisms with ease. Within minutes, he had solved the puzzle, his eyes shining with satisfaction. Well, that was fun. What's next? Lyra couldn't believe it. The human had passed both tests with a level of skill and ease she had never expected. She had intended to challenge him, to prove that he was not worthy of her attention, but instead, he had only earned more of it. Lyra frowned, trying to push away the feeling of respect that was growing inside her. She had to remind herself that this was just another test. But deep down, she knew something had shifted. The human was more than just an outsider. He was someone who could stand beside her, not behind her. After the human passed her tests with such ease, Lyra knew she had to escalate the challenge. He had proven his strength and intelligence, but there was one test that no one could ever pass without struggle. The Tournament of Power. It was an ancient ritual, held only once every decade, where the strongest fighters from across the galaxy competed for honor and glory. Lyra had always watched from the sidelines, but this time, she had a feeling things would be different. The tournament was held in the Grand Arena, a massive structure surrounded by thousands of spectators from many planets. It was a place where warriors and leaders alike gathered, their hearts set on victory. Lyra's father, the king, sat in the royal box, his stern face unreadable as the event began. "I've decided that you, human, will compete in the Tournament of Power," Lyra said to the human, who had been practicing in the training chambers all morning. "It will be your final test." The human looked up, his brow raised in surprise. "The Tournament of Power? I thought I was here to prove my worth to you, not fight in some gladiator contest." Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, though she quickly hid it. "This is more than a contest. It is a symbol of strength, honor, and courage. If you can survive this, you will prove to everyone, including myself, that you are worthy of a place here." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Then let's get started." The tournament was brutal. Each round was filled with fierce combat, as fighters battled to the last man standing. The human, with his agility and wit, quickly adapted to the alien styles of combat. He didn't have the raw strength of some of his opponents, but he used his speed and strategy to his advantage, dodging powerful blows and countering with precision. Lyra watched from the royal box, her eyes locked on the human. She had to admit, she was impressed. He moved with a natural grace, and his instincts were sharp. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a survivor. The final round arrived, and the human found himself face to face with a towering alien warrior from a distant planet. This fighter had defeated many opponents with ease and was known for his deadly strength. His massive frame was covered in armor, and his eyes gleamed with confidence. The crowd roared with excitement as the two opponents stepped into the center of the arena. Lyra's heart beat faster as she watched them prepare for the battle. She had never seen anyone stand up to such a powerful opponent, but the human was not backing down. The fight was intense. The alien warrior swung his weapon with incredible force, each strike sending shockwaves through the arena. The human ducked and dodged, using his small size and speed to stay out of reach. At one point, the warrior attempted to crush him with a brutal overhead swing, but the human swiftly rolled beneath him and landed behind the warrior. With one quick motion, the human grabbed the warrior's weapon, pulling it from his hands and disarming him. The crowd gasped in disbelief as the human stood over his opponent, victorious once again. Lyra felt a strange mixture of pride and astonishment. The human had done the impossible. He had defeated a warrior who no one thought could be beaten. The crowd erupted in applause, and even the king, her father, nodded with approval. But Lyra wasn't focused on the crowd's reaction. Her eyes were fixed on the human. For the first time, she saw him not as a challenge or a test, but as someone who was capable of standing alongside her, not above or below her, but beside her. After the tournament, the human stood in the middle of the arena, his body bruised and tired, but victorious. The crowd's cheers still echoed in his ears, but all he could focus on was the princess sitting high above in the royal box. Her expression was hard to read, but her eyes were fixed on him, her gaze intense and thoughtful. He made his way to the side of the arena, where Lyra awaited. She didn't speak at first, just watched him with an almost unreadable expression. Finally, she broke the silence. "You've done something that no one expected. You've won," she said, her voice steady, but there was something softer underneath. The human smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Guess I surprise you, huh?" Lyra didn't smile back, but her eyes softened slightly. "You've done more than surprise me. You've changed the way I see things." He raised an eyebrow, still catching his breath. "Changed? How?" She sighed, looking away for a moment as though unsure how to express herself. "When you first arrived, I saw you as nothing more than an outsider, a human who didn't belong here. You had no place among my people, and I expected you to fail. But now I see someone who isn't afraid to challenge what's expected." The human felt a warm feeling spread through him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just admiration. There was something deeper there, something he hadn't noticed before. "You were right," he said slowly, his voice quieter now. "I didn't come here to be part of your world. But somewhere along the way, I started thinking maybe I could belong here." Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she quickly hid it behind a mask of composure. She wasn't sure what to make of his words. Her heart, which had remained locked for so long, seemed to be shifting. "I was wrong," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I spent so long refusing others, pushing them away, because I didn't want to be controlled by anyone. I thought that if I stayed distant, I could protect myself. But it's not enough. I've built walls around myself." The human stepped closer, noticing how the princess's eyes were distant, almost sad. For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the universe. The noise of the crowd, the grand palace, the entire kingdom, none of it seemed to matter. He saw the real Lyra, not the princess, not the ruler, but the person hiding behind her duty. "You don't have to do it alone," he said softly. "You don't have to push everyone away just to keep your strength." Lyra looked at him, her heart heavy with emotions she had never allowed herself to feel before. She had always been the one who gave orders, who led, who was expected to stay strong. But now, facing him, she didn't feel so sure of everything anymore. For the first time in her life, she felt vulnerable, exposed, yet there was something comforting in it. The human wasn't asking for her power or her position. He was simply offering his friendship, his companionship, and maybe something more. She took a deep breath. "I don't know if I'm ready for what you're offering, but for the first time, I'm willing to try." The human smiled, his heart racing. He didn't know what the future would hold, but at that moment, he knew one thing for sure. There was more between them than just the games, the tests, and the kingdom's expectations. There was a real connection, a bond that neither of them had planned for, but that neither of them could deny. The days following the tournament were filled with celebration, but Lyra found it hard to focus on the festivities. Her mind kept drifting back to the human, who had proven himself in ways she never expected. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing day, and though she had never allowed herself to entertain the idea of love, she couldn't ignore the feelings stirring inside her. However, not everyone shared her newfound openness. The royal court, and especially her father, King Thoris, were growing increasingly concerned about the princess's interactions with the human. Lyra's refusal to marry any of the powerful suitors had already caused whispers throughout the kingdom. Now, her involvement with the human was making things worse. One afternoon, as Lyra sat alone in her chambers, her father entered without knocking. His expression was cold and stern, as it always was when he had something important to say. "Lyra," he began, his voice low, "we need to talk." She looked up from the holographic map she had been studying. "Father, I know what you're going to say, but I've already made my decision. I will not marry anyone for the sake of political alliances." King Thoris stepped forward, his face hardening. "This human, this outsider, has no place here. He has shown you nothing but trickery and deceit, and you are allowing him to influence you. You are a princess of Valyria. You have duties, responsibilities. Your personal desires cannot get in the way." Lyra stood, her heart pounding with a mix of frustration and sadness. "You don't understand, Father. This human is unlike anyone I've met. He has proven himself, not through power or wealth, but through his strength, his intelligence, and his honesty." Her father's face twisted in anger. "Do not be fooled by him. He is a distraction, nothing more. If you continue down this path, you will jeopardize everything we've worked for. Our kingdom, our legacy. I will not let you ruin everything for this human." His words stung, but Lyra refused to back down. "I am not ruining anything. I'm finding my own path, one that doesn't require me to marry someone for the sake of politics." The king's eyes narrowed as he took a step closer to her. "Then you leave me no choice. I have already arranged a marriage for you, with a prince from the Zarnath system. You will marry him, or I will strip you of your title and your position as heir." Lyra's heart sank. The weight of her father's words crushed her. She had always known that her royal duties would come with sacrifices, but she had never imagined it would come to this. Her love for the human had put her in direct conflict with her family, and now it seemed there was no way out. The king's voice grew colder. "This is not a request, Lyra. It is a command. If you defy me, you will lose everything." Lyra stood frozen, the anger and pain swirling inside her. She had always felt trapped by her responsibilities, but now it felt worse than ever. The thought of marrying someone she didn't love, someone chosen for political gain, was unbearable. But her father's power was absolute. Her mind raced, torn between her duty to her people and her growing feelings for the human. She didn't want to lose everything, but she also couldn't deny the truth that had settled deep in her heart. She wanted to be with him. I need time to think," she said, her voice shaky. The king turned sharply. "You have no time. The decision has been made." As he left the room, Lyra was left standing alone, feeling more lost than ever. The human had come into her life and shown her a glimpse of freedom, of love, but now her own father was threatening to take it all away. The choice seemed impossible, but Lyra knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let this be the end. No matter the cost, she had to find a way to choose her own future. The days that followed the king's visit to her chambers felt like a blur. Lyra's mind was clouded with doubt and fear, torn between the kingdom's expectations and her heart's desires. She couldn't stop thinking about the human, whose presence had started to fill the space she had always kept closed off. Yet the weight of her father's words continued to press down on her. She met with him again the day after the king's ultimatum, but this time everything felt different. The human stood before her in the royal gardens, his usual carefree attitude replaced by something more serious. Lyra's heart skipped a beat as she saw the concern in his eyes. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice gentle but with an edge of worry. "What's going on, Lyra?" She turned away, unable to meet his gaze. The weight of her father's words was still fresh in her mind. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "My father has given me an impossible choice: marry a prince from the Zarnath system, or lose everything. I'm not sure what to do anymore." The human stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her arm. "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I want you to know that whatever happens, I'll be by your side." Lyra looked up at him, her heart aching with the depth of her feelings. She wanted to be with him more than anything, but the price for defying her father was too high. "I can't do that. If I defy my father, I risk everything: the throne, my people, the future of my kingdom. I can't just abandon all of that for a chance at love." The human frowned, understanding the weight of her words but not willing to let her go without a fight. "You don't have to sacrifice everything. There has to be another way." Lyra shook her head, tears threatening to fall. "There isn't. The kingdom needs me, and my people depend on me. If I choose you, I'll be turning my back on all of that." For a moment, the human was silent, his face full of conflict. He took a deep breath, his expression hardening. "Then I'll leave." Lyra's heart stopped. "What? No, you can't." "I don't want to, but if it's the only way for you to keep your place in the kingdom, then I'll go. You deserve to be the ruler your people need. And if I stay, I'll only make things harder for you." Lyra grabbed his arm, panic rising in her chest. "You can't just leave." He silenced her with a soft, understanding look. "I'll be all right. And so will you. You'll find your way. I know you will. You've already shown that you're more than just a princess. You're a leader. But right now, your people need you more than I do." His words hit her like a tidal wave. The pain in her chest deepened, but she knew he was right. If she wanted to protect her people, she had to let go. The reality of the situation was clear. She had to choose her duty, her kingdom, over the man she had grown to love. With a heavy heart, Lyra stepped back, her voice breaking as she spoke. I don't want to lose you." The human gave her a sad smile, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored her own. "You won't lose me. I'll always remember you, Lyra. But sometimes love means letting go. I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing for your people." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lyra standing alone in the garden, her heart torn between her duty and her love. She knew he was right. It was the right thing to do, but the emptiness that settled in her chest made it feel like the wrong choice. Lyra stood at the edge of the palace balcony, staring out over the kingdom she was destined to rule. The distant mountains, the sparkling rivers, the bustling cities, everything she had ever known seemed so far away now, as if it no longer belonged to her. Her heart ached with a loss she couldn't put into words. The human had left, and with him, her chance at a life outside of duty seemed to vanish. But as she stood there, gazing out into the horizon, a new feeling began to stir within her, a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, in what felt like ages, Lyra realized she didn't have to follow the path that had been set for her. She didn't have to sacrifice everything for a throne she didn't want. She had a choice. She could be more than just the princess. She could be the ruler her people needed, but also someone who chose love over duty, if that was what her heart truly wanted. The sound of footsteps behind her pulled her from her thoughts. She turned quickly, her heart racing. Standing in the doorway was the last person she expected to see, the human. "You're back," Lyra whispered, her voice shaking with disbelief. The human smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "I couldn't leave without saying goodbye, but I also couldn't leave without telling you something important." Lyra's chest tightened, and she rushed forward. "You can't just leave, not like that. You were right. I can't choose you and abandon everything I've worked for." The human stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Lyra, listen to me. I don't want you to choose between me and your kingdom. I never wanted that. But I can't stand by and watch you give up your happiness for something you don't truly want. I believe in you. I believe you can have both. You just have to decide what really matters to you." Lyra stared into his eyes, feeling the weight of his words settle deep inside her. "I can't just turn my back on everything. My people depend on me. And your people will always need you," he replied softly. "But they need you to be happy too. If you rule out of duty alone, you'll only grow resentful. But if you rule with love, both for your people and for yourself, you'll be a leader they'll follow with all their hearts, and I'll be right here with you every step of the way." For the first time, Lyra felt something shift within her. The walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, and she realized that it wasn't her father's kingdom or her royal title that defined her. It was her ability to choose the life she wanted to live. And the life she wanted had a place for the human by her side. "I don't want to rule alone," she said, her voice steady now. "I want to rule with you." The human's smile widened. "Then let's make that happen. Let's build a future where we both can be ourselves and be together." Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision lift from her shoulders. She had made her choice. She would not give up her love for duty, but she wouldn't give up her kingdom either. She could be both the ruler her people needed and the person she wanted to be. And with the human by her side, she knew she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they stood together on the balcony, their hands intertwined, Lyra looked out over the kingdom once more. This time, instead of feeling trapped, she felt free. She had found a new hope, a hope that she could have everything she wanted, as long as she was true to herself. Lyra walked through the palace halls, her mind clear for the first time in weeks. She had made her choice, one that would change everything. She would rule with love, not just duty. She would follow her heart, and her heart told her that the human was the one she wanted by her side. The kingdom could wait. Her future could wait, but love could not. She reached the royal gardens, her favorite place to think. The flowers bloomed brightly in the warm sunlight, but Lyra barely noticed. Her thoughts were focused on the human. After their last conversation, she had sent a message to him, asking him to return. She wasn't sure if he would, but now, as she stood in the garden, she couldn't help but hope. And then she heard it, the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned, her heart racing in her chest, and there he was, the human, standing in the doorway, looking as calm and confident as ever, yet there was something different in his eyes, a softness, a warmth. "You came back," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure you would." The human smiled, stepping forward. "You asked me to. And when you make a request like that, I can't refuse." Lyra felt a wave of relief wash over her. She hadn't realized how much she had needed him until this very moment. He was back, and that was all that mattered. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. "I've thought about everything you said. I don't want to choose between love and duty. I can have both." The human reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "You don't have to choose between them, Lyra. You're strong enough to lead your people and love someone at the same time. You've already proven that. You just have to believe it." Lyra looked up at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had always believed she had to sacrifice her happiness for her kingdom. But now, with the human back in her life, she realized that the two weren't mutually exclusive. She could be the ruler her people needed and the person she wanted to be, all in one. "I've made a decision," Lyra said, her voice steady now. "I'm going to rule with love, for my people and for myself. And I want you to be by my side." The human smiled, his eyes bright with pride. "I'd be honored." Together, they stood there in the gardens, the future of the kingdom ahead of them, full of possibilities. Lyra knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, opposition from those who didn't understand her decision, political pressures, and moments of doubt. But she also knew one thing. With the human by her side, she could face anything. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice full of determination. The human nodded, a confident smile spreading across his face. "With you, I'm ready for anything." Lyra took his hand, and together, they walked forward into the future. The kingdom would change, and so would they. But one thing was certain. They would face whatever came together, united in love and purpose. And for the first time in a long while, Lyra felt truly free. Lyra stood before her people, her heart beating with anticipation. It had been weeks since she had made her decision, and today she would make it official. The royal hall was filled with citizens from all over the kingdom, eager to hear what their princess would say. The throne room was decorated with banners of gold and silver, the colors of the royal family. But today, it wasn't about tradition. Today, it was about change. At her side stood the human, the one who had changed her life in ways she never imagined. His presence was reassuring, a reminder that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. He wasn't just her partner in love. He was her partner in leadership. The murmurs in the crowd quieted as Lyra took a step forward. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she wasn't afraid. For the first time, she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. "People of Valyria," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I stand before you today not as a princess, but as your leader. For too long, I've followed the expectations placed upon me, rules of duty, tradition, and power. But I've learned something in the time I've spent with all of you and with the human by my side. I've learned that true leadership comes from the heart, not just from the throne." The crowd listened intently, some confused, others curious. Lyra could feel their eyes on her, waiting for what would come next. She could sense the doubt, the skepticism, but she was ready. She had made her choice, and she would no longer let anyone decide her future for her. "I have chosen love," she continued, her voice filled with conviction. "Not just for myself, but for this kingdom. A kingdom that values strength above all else must also learn to value compassion, connection, and understanding. It is time for us to move forward, together." The room was still, and Lyra could see the faces of her advisors, her father's closest allies, watching with concern. But there was no turning back now. She had to be true to herself. "To do this, I need all of you. I need your support, your trust, and your belief that we can build a future where love and duty are not in conflict, but are one and the same. I will not turn my back on this kingdom, and I will not turn my back on what is right. I promise to lead with compassion, strength, and the hope that we can all grow together." She paused, taking a deep breath. Her gaze turned to the human beside her, his eyes meeting hers with unspoken understanding. He had believed in her from the beginning. And now, she was asking the same of her people. "I am not alone in this. The human beside me is my equal, my partner in all things. Together, we will face the future, not as separate beings, but as one, united by love, purpose, and the shared vision of a better world." There was a long silence after her words, the tension palpable in the air. But then, one by one, the people began to applaud. Slowly at first, hesitant, unsure of what this new path would mean. But as the sound grew, Lyra felt a warmth fill her chest. They were accepting her. They were accepting the future she had chosen. Her father, sitting on the royal throne, said nothing at first. But then, after a moment, he stood. The entire room fell silent again, all eyes on him. Lyra held her breath, waiting for his judgment. To her surprise, her father smiled. It was a small smile, but it was there. "You've made your choice, Lyra," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "And perhaps it is the right one. You will always have my support." Lyra's heart lifted. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had truly earned her place, not just as a princess, but as a leader of her people. The future was uncertain, But one thing was clear. She was ready.